Welcome to this week's Keo podcast, where we tell the unfiltered truth about what happens after you lose substantial amounts of weight. I'm your host, Mel Harris, and there are a few things that I want to talk about today, but one thing in particular is something that has shaken me to my very core. It is a story that has sparked global outrage, and quite frankly, it's made my blood boil. A 9-year-old girl, yes, 9, was forced to have weight loss surgery in Egypt by her parents. 9 years old. She's still losing her baby teeth. Her bones are still growing. Her hormones are far from developed. Her organs are still developing, and with a brain that is hardly able to process the world around her and has no ability whatsoever to make informed choices or judgments. We're talking about a child who should be learning to ride a bike, making friends, falling over and not getting back up again, not being subjected to life-altering surgery because the adults around her decided that her body needed to be surgically altered rather than take responsibility themselves for her nutrition, her education, her activity levels and overall health. I literally can't stop thinking about this poor little girl. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you are going to be seeing a video of an absolutely terrified little girl literally screaming and crying on the operating table until her eyes slowly close, she goes limp, and her head mercilessly collapses back into the surgeon's hand as a result of the anesthesia that's been forced into her body.
لا مش هاخد حقنة. انا مش هاخد حقنة.
خلاص هات البتاع اللي بننفخ فيه.
ما ناخدش حقنة، ناخد الماسك ده نشمه. مش هناخد حقنة خالص.
بصي دي ننفخ
زي دي.
ننفخ دي ولا ناخد حقنة؟ طب يعني لا كده ولا كده؟
بالراحة.
طب قولي لي بقى نعمل ايه؟
عملنا التحليل امبارح.
مش انت
شكيت التحليل بس.
مش انت شكيت التحليل؟
انا شكيت التحليل.
لا ما حد لا ما تخافش معايا انا. مسؤوليتي انا. استنى بس اهدى. انا هي بس عشان ما تتخافش حبيب قلبي. يا سكر ربنا يحفظها، ربنا يخليها جميلة.
You know what it reminds me of? When I had to have my elderly cancer-ridden cat put to sleep. For fuck's sake. This isn't medical care. It's a colossal failure of parents, of professionals, of a system that should protect the vulnerable and instead appears to have colluded in removing this child's right to a childhood. And on top of that, they performed a bariatric sleeve on her. This is non-reversible. It's an exceptionally difficult and complex operation to perform, and it will change how her body absorbs food, nutrients and energy for the rest of her life, leaving her with high risk of future complications and health issues, not to mention the mental health issues she's likely to face after this type of abuse. Have these people never heard of puppy fat? I mean, a child's body is going to change shape and size a dozen times before they've even hit puberty. And if they'd taken the time and trouble to spend time with her, loved her enough to sort out her nutrition, the chances are that she would simply have grown into her body and none of this would have been necessary. I actually remember being at primary school with a little girl who was extremely obese, and that is exactly what happened to her. It was almost like she woke up one morning, she'd had a growth spurt, and suddenly her body fitted her. It's natural. It's nature. The reduced nutrients now being absorbed by this little girl's body are simply not enough for a child of that age, and they are going to affect her further development, the health of her organs and her growth, and so much more. I could actually spit blood right here. And you know what? It so should have been preventable. Where were the safeguards? Where was the psychologist? Where was the professional yelling, "Stop! This is a child"? Who stopped to even ask this terrified little girl if she even knew what was happening? And even if she did, you can't get informed consent when you still sleep with a teddy. There is absolutely no justification for this. Nothing cultural or otherwise justifies taking a child, a baby really, and tell her that she is so wrong, so broken, so unfixable that she needs to undergo major surgery. That is trauma. That is abuse. She should have been able to rely on her adults to say, you're growing, you're safe, we'll get through this together, and we love you regardless. But can you imagine being 9 years old? You're still learning how to navigate your times tables. You've just had the stabilizers taken off of your bike and you're trying to coordinate your arms and your legs at the same time for swimming breaststroke. You still believe in magic, for God's sake, and suddenly the grown-ups around you turn on you. They tell you that your body needs to be cut open to fix it, and you are being forcibly held down on a table, prepped for surgery that you don't understand, surrounded by big, faceless grown-ups in masks and gloves and machines and beeping and bright lights. How do you ever forget something so traumatic? How do you ever get over that? But that is exactly what happened to this little girl. Her closest people decided that the problem wasn't them, wasn't their culture, or the diet, or the lack of education, or the emotional pain. It was her. No, it's unthinkable. And let's not pretend that this is only an issue in Egypt. Okay, yeah, this is where the tragedy happened, but some of the thinking behind this is global. We live in a world that pathologizes normal bodies, especially female ones. And I'm not trying to say it's not the same for you men, because it actually is. We panic at the first sign of softness. Softness makes us unacceptable. It makes us ugly. It makes us different. It makes us lazy. It makes us unlovable. No one will want to marry us. So we medicalize weight before we even understand the person that's carrying it. And we call that care. When did we start confusing treatment with punishment? Our obsession with weight has eclipsed our duty to protect, nurture and understand. And it's not just about this one child. It's about how easily we let fear and stigma drive decisions that should be grounded in science, ethics and humanity. I am not calling for a witch hunt. I'm calling for accountability. The surgeon is under investigation, and rightly so, because without accountability, medicine becomes arrogance. And the parents? Okay. If I have any empathy for them at all, and believe me, I am having to dig really deep here, but I do understand the constraints of certain cultures, certain belief systems, and the fear that that would have instilled into them. I mean, I really do. I know what it's like to live in a world that judges you by your size. But desperation and a lack of education does not justify damage. A parent's job is to protect, not to project. If they can't do that, they do not have the right, in my opinion, to care for a child, and this should be treated as a safeguarding issue. That child deserved advocates, doctors, psychologists, social workers, all of whom could have stepped in and said, no, not like this. And if none of those systems existed or were silenced, then that's where the shame belongs. Not with the child, but with the adults who failed her. I'm angry, yeah. But you know what? Beneath that anger is heartbreak, because I see echoes of this everywhere. In every adult who was told as a child that their body was wrong, in every woman who can't eat a meal without feeling guilty, in every man who hides behind humour because he was bullied for his weight at school. It all starts so early on, and it starts when we stop letting children be children. We need to talk about prevention, not surgery, education, psychology, compassion. They're much more important. We need to teach families that a child's weight is not a moral failure. We need to create systems that support healthy habits, emotional well-being, and realistic expectations, never punishment. Because you can't carve confidence out of a child. You can only nurture it. So if you're listening today and you're as horrified as I am, let me know. Maybe we can't change the situation worldwide, but maybe we can show our own nearest and dearest, our friends, our communities, our families, how dangerous child shaming is. Let's get it into schools. Keep it honest, keep it human, and above all, keep it off.